So where in this journey did you learn about the Concordant version?
Well, interestingly enough, it would have been during that same time, maybe like the next year after I saw the Distinct Ministry of Paul. I'm thinking it would be about 1986 or 87. I would have became acquainted with Concordant stuff. This is fascinating. Now, I already had probably one of the first great dispensational tools I would end up getting is a companion Bible.
Okay.
And its notes are filled with, interesting, presenting the inconsistencies of the King James Bible for one, but also making dispensational distinctions. It's one of the greatest tools that Father provided in the historical setting 100 plus years ago. And but yeah, interesting story that you would ask me that. So there was a man from North Carolina. So I was teaching one day on the radio, and I had come to learn some things of right division a little bit. And I was teaching on some parables in the Gospels, and I was saying they weren't for today. I don't even know how I knew that. But I guess I did have some insight in progressive revelation. A guy listened to me who was a mid-act dispensationalist. He was listening to me from another state. The radio station that we had broadcast from was, I believe, in Chesapeake, Virginia, and so it covered the whole Tidewater area where I pastored in Hampton, and covered into to North Carolina. And there was a guy down there who was a mid-act dispensationalist, and hearing me that day, he thought I was. So our broadcast was on Saturdays. So the next day he shows up at church, and because he thinks he's found him a mid-act dispensational church, he thinks he's found him a church that teaches the distinct ministry of Paul. And he came really early that morning, just wanted to chat and get to know each other. I think we both knew within a few minutes of each other we weren't on the same page. Okay, he's talking to a Baptist pastor, and one of the things he's talking to me about is the one baptism of Ephesians, and I'm like, oh boy. I think I've heard of these people before. Ruckman called them dry cleaners because they didn't use water. And I thought, oh my gosh, Peter Ruckman warned me about these dry cleaners. And he would say, avoid these people at all costs. Don't let them into your church because they'll destroy your church, these dry cleaners. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's a dry cleaner. And I felt sorry for him. I don't know how I think to myself, how do you get mixed up in such a bad thing? And he left me with a book. He left me with a book called Things That Differ by C.R. Stamm. C.R. Stamm's mid-acts dispensationalist. But he does a great job showing that Paul's ministry is different than the 12. And I never saw him again except one more time. I'm going to answer your question. And so I spent at a Christian school at the time, so I was busy all the time. But we had summer break, and I read Things That Differ, and I read it really carefully, really slowly, because my intention was to get back with, his name was Vince Mercer. I want to get back with Vince and we'll sit down with the book together, and I'll help him see, well, this is not good stuff. And you know what happened? Got my tuning fork here. And as I read that book, chapter by chapter, couldn't find any mistakes. It was full of scripture. And it was zeroing in on what seemed like every question of confusion I ever had. Now, I know now that it didn't go far enough, but it addressed the fact that Paul was different. And before I got done with the book, I was a mid-acts dispensational. Excuse me. I was a dry cleaner. So fast forward. I don't know how long, a year or two. I really don't. He contacted me again. I had written to him a couple times and didn't have much dialogue. This is the strange thing. Turns out he had been in a Baptist church, and he had come to he had come to see this view and embrace this stuff, and waving at the mailman. And so somewhere along the way, he went back to being a Baptist and abandoned all this stuff. And he reached out to me. Now, I suspect a lot of people who abandon light they have. Now, why do they do that? Did they really not have light? Were they just parroting things they had heard? Well, I know in his case, I think he lost his social life. I think his family, his marriage stuff. And I think sometimes it's convenient for people to pretend they don't see things anymore for the sake of a lot of reasons. But anyway, I don't know. I'm just thankful he saw what he saw, or saw what he thought he saw, or thought he saw, long enough to tell me. So anyway, so he reached out to me and he says, I have a large library with hundreds of dispensational works. And he had it from all the camps. Acts 2 dispensational, mid-Acts, Acts 28. And he said, would you be interested in buying? I want to get rid of it. So I bought his library, hundreds of books, boxes and boxes of books. Everybody was in there. I don't know how long he had been on this journey, but he'd been buying up books on dispensational stuff. So like I said, all the positions were there. My first introduction to Charles Welch, Welch's books are in there. My first introduction to Knox books are in there. So to answer your question, I got a jump start on men that I don't know how long it would have taken me to have found A. Knox or Charles Welch and just go through. Because he had books, had obscure books by dispensational authors. And it was the treasure house. God had somebody assemble it for me. Now, I'll admit to you, early on, especially with Knox and the Concordant material, the Concordant version, I'm like, okay. Dispensational stuff, but he's got other stuff in here. This sovereignty of God stuff. This salvation of all stuff, okay. He was dispensational, but he had a lot of other problems. So took me a long time. In fact, I never got rid of any of that stuff, you know. And I'd say some of it, you know, I didn't start getting rid of maybe till I was in Pennsylvania. Just some of it, maybe I just didn't have a use for anymore. But as I began to see things myself, I began to think, wait a minute. I think there's some writings on that somewhere back in here. You know, so I had access. These things were on my shelves as early as maybe 1986, 87, 88. And every now and then, just like with stuff I've held on for a long time, you know, I go back and look at it every now and then, you know, it's like just some curiosity. I would mark it off to that. You know, I'd see it now as my journey and the drawing of God. Hey, go look at that again. Yeah. So all my stories are long today.
That's awesome.
You tell me.
I mean, that's another part of your journey to get
Yes.
to where we are.
Yes.
And all right.
You're a good interviewer. I love that though, and I think it is cool to. I know I love to know people's journey and how they got somewhere.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I've never heard any of these stories before.
Yeah. Well, if you keep digging, you might get more.
Yeah. Things pop in my head.
Yeah.